Elon Musk has been on record to say that the Optimus robot will eventually be the biggest product in the history of the world, replacing the iPhone, saying that everyone will have an Optimus in their home that will do their laundry, dishes, do homework with the kids. And it seems rather fantastical. And in this week's earnings report from Tesla, which comes tomorrow on Wednesday, we're going to get an update on Optimus. And not only that, but on self driving. And we're going to see what type of impact that has on the Tesla stock price. So, what potentially can happen with Tesla earnings tomorrow? Find out in today's video. You are looking at a Tesla chart here on the daily. And we have earnings coming up tomorrow. Super excited about that. We have Netflix coming this evening, and it's earnings season, and I'm here for it. I love earnings. And let's take a look potentially at what can happen here with Tesla. Now, keep in mind that Tesla finally broke out of this range back here on September 11th when it was announced that Elon Musk had purchased several shares of Tesla. I can't remember what the number was, but it was something astronomical. And you could see those two big massive candles that pushed this thing higher. And we hit a high of 470.42. So this thing has pushed. And since then, it's just been kind of chopping around up here, building out some volume. But I want you to notice that we have two areas of interest to keep an eye on. One being right here. This is a gap that needs to be filled from Friday, September 12th. And that's at the price point of 397.06. And then we also have another gap down here at 368.83 that if we do see a drop, those potentially can be support points. But let's take a look back historically at what Tesla has done on earnings to get an idea of what we could possibly see tomorrow. So let's just come back here. We're going to look at July 23rd and what happened. And this was a gap down. Let's just measure this out from its close to the low of that day. It dropped 9.68%. That was a $32 decrease. And so here we have a gap down that occurred in July. In the summertime can be a weak period of time for Tesla. October typically is weak for Tesla, but November you do see an uptick in the price action. So we had a gap down in July. And if we come back over here to April, again, everything was just in disarray at this point. This is all the tariff nonsense. But you could see here, we actually did have a gap up. So let's measure this out from its close to the high that following day. We had an increase of about $21.32. So we're going to mark this as a gap up, gap up. So that was when really Tesla found a bottom and started to push higher. You had really a triple bottom pattern here. And this 50, which should have proved as resistance, didn't stand a chance. It shot right through it. And it eventually went on to reach an interim high there of 367.32. So the last two reports, gap down and a gap up. So let's go over to January, I believe. Yes, January 25th of this year. And let's take a look at what happened here. And let me zoom in on this so we could see it clearly. We are right here. We closed right here at 389.23. We actually did gap up 5.9%, $22.95. But you could see that it could not hold on to those gains at that point, and then it just kind of trickled down. Again, this was when all the Liberation Day, the tariffs really took effect. So we're going to label this as a gap up, but fade down. So could not hold on to these gains. And just continuing back further, let's go to last fall, October 23rd. Right here, I actually remember this earnings report. I was outside installing a zip line for my kids in my yard as I listened to the conference call with Elon Musk. And you could see that we had sold down into the 100, broke below it the day of the earnings call, and we actually gapped up 22.73%. That's a $48.53 move. So we had a gap up here last fall. So let's mark that as a gap up. And then let's just go back one more and see what we did the previous July. So we had a gap down here, and let's measure this out. From the close to the low of the following day, we had a 12.78% move, $31.48. We had a gap down here. So just to summarize, let's just look at what we saw the last few times that Tesla reported earnings. We had a gap down in July. We had a gap up in, I believe this was April. Yep, April. We had a gap up and fade down in January. We had a gap up last October. And then the previous July, we gapped down. So just looking here, and we're going to count that gap up, fade down as a move down. We had 1, 2, 3 moves down, 2 moves higher. And so really it doesn't give us any indication probability wise that it's due for a push higher or that it's due for a push lower. It can really go either way. And what we really want to pay attention to, and how I started this video, is what does Musk have to say about the progression of autonomous self-driving with Tesla vehicles? How much progress have they made? And we know that they rolled this out in Austin, Texas. So expect him to provide an update on that, where Tesla currently is with their self-driving performance, and if they are making strides, if they're closer than what they've indicated in the past, then that's going to be bullish, obviously, for the stock. Now, Musk is known as an over promiser and an under deliverer. I don't even know if those are words, but it sounds good enough. So let's see what he has to say. He's always very optimistic in his comments. But the other thing that we want to hear him make comments on is, what does he have to say about the Optimus robots? Where are they in terms of their development? How soon is that technology going to come to market? And again, is the timeline sooner than expected? And those are two things that we want to see, whether or not there's positive news and can that push the market higher. And then the last thing to keep in mind is Tesla's solar energy component of their business, which has been very strong in recent reports. And let's see what is projected there, if they continue to make progress and to show that that is a big component of their business in terms of their profitability, because that could also be something that is bullish for the company. So we want to keep an eye on all three of those things. And with that said, what are we looking for here in terms of a move? Well, one of the things that has been coming up, if you look at options flow, is there have been a lot of call options at that $500 and above level where people are buying calls. So a lot of analysts or retail traders are expecting a big move. They maybe have some inside information that other people do not, and they anticipate a big move higher. $500 would take out the all-time high, because the all-time high right now is 488.10. So keep that in mind, that there are those call options out there that are sitting that potentially could point to a bullish move. However, if they miss on targets, if they are underwhelming in their progress with self-driving, if they're underwhelming in their reports on the Optimus, we could see a push lower. So what are we looking at for the bear case and the bull case? Well, let's start with the bear case, and we can see that we have some very clear support areas here on Tesla. The first being that gap that I talked about at the beginning of this video at 397.06. We would want to see if we would come down and fill that gap, which also lines up here with that 50 simple moving average on the daily. And if it's a really poor showing, potentially we could even come lower down to that 368.83. Now, that would just be a massive move from where we are right now. That would be a $76 move. That doesn't seem likely. So if it is bearish, if we do get some poor results from Tesla, more than likely we would see this retest of the 50 and a fill of that gap, which would then set Tesla up for a move higher in November, when it typically is strong. And then what do we want to watch for in terms of a push higher? Well, we have to start just by looking at previous price action in that all-time high at 488. And can it get there? And it absolutely can. That's actually not that big of a move from where it is today. Right now, it's at 445.89. So we would want to watch how it interacts with that 488.95 mark. And that would be a move of about $43, which is in alignment with historically what Tesla has reported, about a $9.75%, or excuse me, 9.75% move. But also keep in mind all of those call options that are out there at $500. Again, maybe there's something that's going to be announced in this meeting that can push this above that $500 mark. But the two key areas we want to watch, 397.06, that first gap fill, the 50 SMA, and we want to keep an eye on that 488 level, 489 area from its previous all-time high and how it reacts to that price action. My take here on what I see happening, again, the month of October historically is not a good month for Tesla. November tends to be better. So what I would like to see as a trader is let's get a bit of a retest. Let's drop, let's fill that gap and set ourselves up for a long move into the end of the year. That doesn't mean that I'm going to get it. But in terms of where it is now, I will say this, that the rise off of Musk buying the shares and the fact that it's holding steady up here in the mid 400s, and the fact that we have all those call options rolling in at 500 could point to potentially something being announced in this meeting that is going to drive this higher. So I'm going to lean slightly bullish here that Tesla is going to set up for a push higher, and that we may even see a break of 500, not off of the earnings report, but in the weeks that follow, setting up for a strong end of year rally. So there you have it, my thoughts on Tesla heading into this earnings report. And what do you think is going to happen? Will it break 500 in the next few weeks, or is it coming down to fill those gaps? Drop that in the comments below and join me for the next earnings preview video that I'm going to do, because next week we have Amazon, we have Apple, we have all the big boys reporting, and you're going to get the analysis here at Courage Pays Better Than Fear Trading. Check out the videos on the screen. Thank you for your support of the channel, and as always, make it a great day and honor the moment. Markets collide.